The views and opinions expressed on Real Talk with Horace Sheffield are not those of WADL TV 38 or Adele Broadcasting Corporation.
Giving you real talk, real talk, real talk. Take a walk down this path through Detroit, This is real talk, real talk, real talk. Real issues straight from the heart, Giving you real talk, real talk, real talk. Take a walk down this path through Detroit, This is real talk.
Welcome to another edition of Real Talk. I'm Reverend Sheffield, my capable co-host, award-winning journalist Gerald W. Smith, back-to-back over with Martha Jane the Queen, of course, Public Television, American Black Journal, and then David Felton, Wayne County Sheriff, Vice President of Dabo, one of my mentees. One day he'll take over everything I have. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
One of my dear friends, Ralph, former chief of police, held numerous positions, Ralph Godbee of the Godbee family. And I thought I'd start, this is Black History Month and there are people that we know. But I met your family at a very young age, 19, 20 years of age, First Baptist Institutional Church, where I preached my first sermon almost 50 years ago.
Yes, sir.
Mother Godbee,
my grandmother.
Your grandmother,
yes,
was the matriarch of that church.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I miss her tremendously too.
Tell us a little bit about her.
Wow, my grandmother was just one of those old school mothers of the church, the altar circle, a supporter and lover of her pastors. Just set the example for young ladies in the church as to, a chaste woman.
Right.
And, she was married at 15, had 17 children. And when my grandfather died in 1955, late Reverend Dwight Minus Godbee, she never married again. The love of her life died. And she was just, truly the matriarch of the family. I watched movies like Soul Food, Reverend Sheffield, and they bring a tear to my eyes. That's my life story.
She was an encourager, and I'll say this, in 1975.
Yes, sir.
October 18th, I think it was, I preached my first sermon.
Yeah.
And people don't come back in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Pastor Poncho had me do it in the evening. And she came over and she says, I believe, son, you're gonna preach the gospel.
That's my grandma.
Yeah. So let's start with Gerald. We got you on here in a timely way. Tyree Nichols' funeral was this week. Police brutality is running rampant. Gerald, why don't you start with the question?
Chief, it's great to see you again. It's been a long time.
It's been a while. Good to see you as well.
Yes, sir. Listen, so on the issues, right to the quick on police reform, what should real police reform look like? Because it's been said that police reform efforts should address, racial and economic inequities and other societal problems, some caused by policing itself. What do you think?
I think that's 100% accurate. And until we make the main thing, because a lot of the abuses that we see in the community, it goes directly to police culture. And if you look at the Freddie Gray situation when he was killed by the police, the majority of the officers were African-American in that case as well. So that is really why we've got to look at the culture and the system, because you can replace the white faces with Black faces, but if you don't change the policy, if you don't change the laws, if you don't change the culture, you're going to get the same results. And that's dead Black people, unarmed, or an over-policing or excessive uses of force that continue to happen. And the commonality is not the color of the officer, even though they're majority white. The commonality is that it's unarmed Blacks that end up dead at the end of these encounters. Yeah. And we're not inherently worse than white people. We're not inherently dangerous. The targeting and the over-policing in our communities due to crime problems. The Scorpion unit, the way it was constructed, and I don't want to dump on a Black woman who's accomplished, who's done a tremendous job to, go up through the ranks and be chief in two major cities. But by the same token, we've got to be careful how much we pat the firemen on the back if they started the fire. So you've got to look at who created the Scorpion unit, Gerald, and how it was constructed And what were their instructions? Because David knows, as a law enforcement officer, chiefs and sheriffs, they're under the pressure to reduce crime. But the problem with crime suppression is like a sponge. It stays down as long as you hold it. But as soon as you take your hand off of it, it expands, it goes back. So if you don't address the economic issues, the social structure, you don't address the laws that disparately affect Black people, even if the law wasn't intended to affect us in a disparate way, the application of the law. So for instance, the Michigan vehicle code, Reverend Sheffield, it's thicker than the Bible. There's any excuse you want in there to stop a Black person anytime you want to, indiscriminately, if you go through that code. We've got to take some of that power back, because you can't change 18,000 police departments' culture overnight with training. You can't train hate and racism out of an agency, but you can change the rules of engagement. So the unfettered discretion officers have with traffic stops, we've got to reel that in, and we've got to make traffic enforcement really about safety and not about these pretextual stops that are disproportionately applied to Black folks that you wouldn't do in Grosse Pointe.
Right.
You wouldn't do in West Bloomfield. You wouldn't do in downtown Detroit.
Right.
Now that this been gentrified. Yeah. So we've got to address the system, and then the culture will come along, because it's got to be ramifications, and you got to put some boundaries back and some guardrails back in place. That's the rules of engagement.
All right,
Good
David,
point.
you have a question before we go to break?
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to know, Chief, I've worked with you in several capacities. When you were chief, you were big on community policing, things of that nature. How do we, as a people, police our own selves? And what role does that play in decreasing the amount of police brutality within our community? And I don't know if we can answer that before the commercial.
He can go ahead and answer it. Yeah.
I'll do it real quick, Dave. And I'm writing my book, and this is really the first part of my book is how we grew up in Detroit. We were blessed to grow up with Coleman Young, the first Black mayor, William Hart, the first Black chief. I don't recall in my formative years, because he ran on getting rid of stress, stop the robberies, enjoy safe streets. We had a civilian oversight with the Board of Police Commissioners. So I don't recall the police over-policing in my neighborhood, because we had mechanisms in place to stop that. So and our neighbors, that was the police. I was more afraid of my dad than I was a police officer. So until we get back to that kind of acculturation of the role of police in our community, we're asking them to solve problems that they didn't create, number one, and they're not even equipped to deal with. Because if a hammer is the only tool you got, every problem is a nail. And that's what happens in Black communities with the police.
All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, more with Chief Godbee. Obviously, be careful, because ours running their family. Ronald, Ralph.
Yes.
Ralph Godbee here.
At the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, we're working hard to protect pipes by cleaning public sewer lines to reduce flooding and speeding up the replacement of lead service lines. Protect your pipes with 3 easy tips. Pour grease into containers, toss wipes in the trash can, and check for running toilets, leaky pipes, and dripping faucets. For more tips, go to detroitmi.gov/protect pipes. DWSD, working hard to protect pipes for you.
Peace and love. I am Amore Shanae, owner of Amore Natural Way Natural Hair and Braiding Salon, located West Detroit at 13201 Grand River. We specialize in all braids, twists, and locking services. We offer complimentary wine and refreshments with service, and we can promise you a peaceful, positive, and professional experience. To book with us, give us a call and follow us on Instagram at Amore Natural Way Salon.
Well, welcome back to Real Talk. We're having a great conversation with former DPD Chief of Police Ralph Godbee, and of course, my co-host. So a couple things that I want to go to. Real comment first, and then a question. So I'm older than you, so I grew up under stress.
Yes.
In
the Big Four.
Officer was finally convicted, who killed somebody on the corner of 75 and Woodward. near the Motown building. They got him. I think his name was Perry. Found cat hairs the cat hairs on the victim.
His name was Raymond Peterson.
Peterson, that's what it was, Peterson. I mean, but here this guy was killing people left and right.
Yeah.
But anyway,
12 of them, 12 people.
Yes.
no question, man. And in fact, in one of the cases when he was on trial, or when there was some kind of trial involving him or some inquisition, and the guy was paralyzed that he shot on Claremont and Woodward. And so they asked the officer Peterson, well, did you identify yourself? He said, yeah. What do you say? He said, Detroit police, stop. They asked the guy in the wheelchair, what he said? He said, guess who, MF? Boom,
Yeah.
Look, I can't think, I'm gonna do my research. I can't think of the former mayor of Minneapolis, who I think has the most pertinent insight and perspective on what we're dealing with. Because you're right, white cops, black cops.
Yeah.
I mean, the victims are the same and generally the same view.
Yes.
But and the attitudes that black cops have is against a lesser element.
Right.
The whites against black.
Yes.
He said the reason we have this problem is because the majority of our officers and major forces across the country today have been in Iraqi freedom or Desert Storm. And many of them are suffering PTSD, but even if they're not, their venue is guerrilla warfare.
Absolutely.
And they see everybody's enemy combatants.
Yes. Yes. And that is, Rev, you hit on something that's more nuanced than the conversation has been. And you really got to look at two communities that are traumatized, the Black community, because when we see red and blue lights in our rearview mirror, it's a much different construct than a white person when they see the same thing. What are you stopping me for, buddy? I pay your salary. Black people, we don't have that luxury because we know that a traffic stop, no matter how mundane it should be, it could end up in somebody dying.
Right.
And when you continue to see that, we got a traumatized community. I don't care where you're at, that's a level of trauma. Reverend Sheffield, when you add a traumatized police officer approaching that car who has a preconceived notion that Blacks are violent, this is going to be a violent encounter, and we program officers to believe that traffic stops are the most dangerous thing they can encounter, which just parenthetically, let me say this. A traffic stop is self-initiated for the most part. If it's the most dangerous thing that you do, why hasn't the industry found a way to curtail how many traffic stops you do? To me, that's negligence on police leadership. You got cameras that can get the video of your license plate and send you a ticket in the mail. You eliminate the traffic stop. Right. So it ain't about traffic, it's protection. But
and
again,
there's nothing really going on that's life-threatening at that moment.
Absolutely.
The person, if they got bad plates or bad license, they're going about their business.
Exactly.
Catch them in something else.
And Rev, what you do is you just make strict liability towards the owner of the vehicle. Yeah. You're responsible, if you own a vehicle, you're responsible to make sure it's licensed appropriately and it has insurance. And if you don't, I don't give a damn who's driving the car. You make the owner of the vehicle strictly liable for that vehicle moving about in our fairway, in our thoroughfares. But I'll say this: there are three responses from a stress standpoint: fight, flee, or freeze. So you got a traumatized police officer, you got a traumatized Black person. You have 2 or 3 outcomes that don't work well for Black people, because if you fight with the police, they use that as their justification to kill you. If you run from the police, you must have done something wrong. Running from the police in and of itself is not illegal. It's not illegal. Tennessee versus Garner, you can't shoot a fleeing felon in the back if they pose no other danger. But and then freeze, then you're locked up. So Black people are caught in an untenable position, physiologically, sociologically, economically, every kind of ology you can think of. It don't work well for Black people on traffic stops.
Yeah, David.
Yeah, I just wanted to continue on the same vein we were talking about before as it relates to community. What can we do as a people to, again, curtail the violence within our community, in our culture? And I'm saying the police do play a role in it, and we do need police reform. But what can we do? As Bishop has talked about, a lot of times, a lot of the issues and concerns that we have are self-inflicted.
Yeah.
So, and I think if we think about ourselves differently, and have a different perception about how we feel about ourselves, then other folks might feel differently and engage us differently as well.
Well, I think it's more than just criminal justice reform. It's community culture reform. And what I mean by that, David, is, being poor ain't new to Black folks. Being unemployed, it ain't new to Black folks. We've always been the last hired, the first fired. We've always had redlining and insurance redlining and restrictive covenants. The difference is now our kids are exposed to so much. And now you exacerbate that with the over incarceration of Black men. We've taken Black men out of our communities, and you got kids raising kids. So the infrastructure for outreach, community outreach organizations like Dabo, like Jason Wilson, what he does with young men, bolstering those infrastructures so we create community again, where we can engage these young people. And let's be honest, Detroit Public Schools, we've got to do a better job of public schooling in urban areas, how we fund it, what the programming is relative to education, and then what are the social supports we provide for young people. Those are the things that change the violence on the ground. And Joanne Watson said it better than anybody, former city council president. The greatest crime reduction strategy is a job. People having the dignity of being able to feed their family, the dignity of being able to drive your car and afford your insurance and have it licensed appropriately. A lot of times we're criminalizing being poor. And when you look at the Michigan Vehicle Code, the insurance industry is one of the richest industries in the world. And we criminalize a person that's got to make a life choice. Do I pay this unbelievably higher than anybody in the nation car insurance? Do I take a chance to drive to work? And if I drive to work and get stopped, I'm gonna get a misdemeanor. But if I don't go to work, I'm gonna get fired and I can't feed my family. Yeah. You're making people make life choices over traffic. And those are the kind of things. Yeah. Yes.
We gotta take a quick break, but I want to say one thing really quickly that people don't discuss. White couple friend of mine, very engaged in litigation around the country. And they remind me all the time that the vast majority of our young people in Detroit have some form of mild to severe lead poisoning.
Yes.
And what are the two symptoms of lead poisoning? Aggressiveness,
yes,
and lack of attentiveness.
Absolutely.
And we don't address that, then we're gonna have kids out here fighting because you looked at them the wrong way.
Yes, sir.
Back after this.
The Detroit Water and Sewerage Department is looking for motivated Detroiters to be a part of our team. We have opportunities for field services technicians, engineers, and customer service specialists with competitive pay and benefits. Make a real difference with the work you do every day. Join other Detroiters who are taking part protecting the pipes where we live, work, and play. Learn more and apply at detroitmi.gov/jobs. DWSD, working hard for you.
I'm Wayne County Treasurer Eric Sabree, encouraging all taxpayers to please take advantage of the several payment options available.
You can pay online by visiting the Wayne County Treasurer's Office website. Paying online is easy and convenient.
You can also download the mobile app and pay with your smartphone.
You can pay at one of 70 kiosks located throughout Wayne County.
And yes, you can always still send in your payments using the U.S. Postal Service.
If you have to visit our office in person, you must make an appointment by going to treasurer.waynecounty.com. It only takes a few minutes. Facial covering or mask is required and social distancing is observed. Your health and safety is very important to us. You can also email our office at taxinfo@waynecounty.com or call us at 313-224-5990.
Well, we got to have Chief Godbee back on. I mean, just great conversation. We could do several shows with him alone. You should be impressed with how informed he is, how smart he is. Did you go to a Detroit public school?
Bishop, I think you know the place I went. We share a Cass Tech alum association.
Forget you, Daryl. Go ahead, Joe. You have a question for the chief?
Yeah, for you technicians. So Chief, this is inside baseball, but tell us about the role of police unions, because as a, there's been said that unions protect their officers. And so the accountability factor does play a role in terms of misconduct. So give us some insight perspectives on that, please.
Gerald, I'm glad you brought that up. And I want to point out this little bit of nuance, because we look at the Tyree Nichols case. You have 5 Black police officers that were immediately fired and in relative terms, immediately charged at the highest level of the law. I haven't heard from the Fraternal Order of Police. I haven't heard from any of the national police organizations that wanted them to have due process to arguably, if these were white officers, I have never seen justice dispatched that quickly. And to that point, this is what I caution Black police officers. Coleman Young, Martin, Malcolm, Rosa, they didn't fight to get us in these spaces to replicate the behavior. And you can think you can mistreat our community and get away with impunity. They'll hold us accountable quicker and with more intensity than they ever will their own. So, Black police officers, we have a responsibility. This is on our shoulders. And so your point, Gerald, I think is very astute from the standpoint, it does have an inhibition in the overall construct of police reform. But when it's a Black police officer, same thing in Minneapolis. When the Black police officer, I think he shot a white person. He was fired and charged and convicted. Getting police convictions don't happen often in the United States. Right. So the police unions, they're complicit, but not to the security of the jobs of Black police officers when there is similar situations. So it just exposes the dirty underbelly of policing in America, which its roots come from slave patrols. And it hasn't changed much because slave patrols, you control Blacks by fear, violence, and intimidation.
Yeah, see, and you're not too far off, by the way. There's a great book my dad did the forward in by B.J. Whittick, historian for the UAW, who was a part of TULC, called Detroit City Race and Class Violence in 28 or 29, when Charles Bowles, Grand Dragon of the Klan, he narrowly lost the runoff.
Yes.
Because Jews and Blacks and other folks got together. But what was important to note is that the Detroit Police Department began to recruit Klansmen South to control the Black population. There are actual ads. Actual evidence of this.
Yes.
So we wonder why these folks got these attitudes, because that's what they were brought here for, to control niggas.
Exactly.
So with regard to Tyree, and it's unfortunate that happened to him. Tyree
Nichols,
Tyree Nichols.
Last name, that's all. Go ahead.
All right, Tyree Nichols, Mr. Nichols, forgive me. It is sad, a sad set of affairs, and even more so that they were American. Now, as the investigation goes, I've been researching a little bit. It appears that officers that were involved in the assault actually knew Mr. Nichols. Mr. Nichols was engaged, I guess, with his ex-girlfriend or something like that. Just speak to the conduct and just to continue on what you were saying about the expectations of African-American officers and how we need to ensure that we are either meeting the standard or exceeding the standard as relates to a conduct becoming of an officer.
I've heard that story and it hasn't hit the mainstream media and reported widely. And if that's true, it makes us even that much more reprehensible. But that still doesn't excuse the other 4 officers, 5, 6, 7 officers that participated. Because if it was simply just a personal vendetta of that one officer, you would have some expectation that the other officer would pull him out and say, look, Doc, you're doing too much.
Right.
So it's still, it's just a level of depravity and entitlement and just sheer abuse that is sickening, Dave. And, you and I both know, we came up under great mentors, Benny Napoleon, Ike McKinnon, Ella Bully Cummings, Stanley Knox, who was just, so hyper community focused that, Detroit has been blessed, even though we've had our problems, because we've always had, at least in my lifetime of policing, civilian oversight where these things wouldn't be allowed. Mayor Young set the tone. Look, and Mayor Young told the gangs, when gangs were being a proliferation in Detroit, I got the biggest gang in the city. But he also impressed upon us and everyone that took leadership you will not mishandle and mistreat the people of this community. The neighborhood city halls, the mini stations, all of these things were a construct of the city of Detroit.
So we got 2.5 minutes real quickly. There were two things that were most egregious to me in those videos. One was the guy that kept kicking him and then wound up limping around.
Yeah.
And you could hear him breathing all hard. I mean, what would you expect to happen to your damn foot?
Exactly.
You know? And the second one, what is on their mind if they know this is being videotaped?
You know, Bishop, that last point, you got to stick a pin in that. Video cameras can't be a panacea for reform. Reform has to happen culturally, because Eric Garner, there was video, we saw it, those officers walked. You know, so what I don't want us to get is a level of comfort where we just get a front row seat and some popcorn. And that's not my question. My question. No, I know. Yeah. Do
you think, and you may be on the right street, that because even with video,
yes,
predictions are difficult. They probably say, ain't nobody gonna do that no way. And we hear them setting the narrative in advance.
Absolutely. And that's why I'm glad you brought that up, Bishop, because you got to think how depraved the culture is to know that everybody is a walking media person now with a cell phone camera. You got cameras on poles. You are wearing body mics and cameras. Yet the culture is so entrenched that you can act out like that, knowing that you're being recorded and still go to that level of depravity. Yeah. That shows just how entrenched the culture is and how much work we have to do on the legally and to hold people accountable.
Well, we thank you very much. We basically run out of time. We're in the process of formulating our media platform. We got a brand new building. I'll make sure I send you an invitation.
Congratulations too.
And, you know, we love to really have people like you on a regular basis, because we always do it when something happens.
Yes.
Maybe we need some prescriptive.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In advance. So thank you so much. Thank you, my co-host David Felton and Gerald W. Smith. You always add to the show. Without you, I'd be nowhere and no one. Everybody else, remember I tell you all the time, never ask anybody to do for you what you're unwilling to do for yourself. See you next week.
At the Detroit Water and Sewerage Department, we're working hard to protect pipes by cleaning public sewer lines to reduce flooding and speeding up the replacement of lead service lines. Protect your pipes with 3 easy tips. Pour grease into containers, toss wipes in the trash can, and check for running toilets, leaky pipes, and dripping faucets. For more tips, go to detroitmi.gov/protect pipes. DWSD, working hard to protect pipes for you.
Peace and love. I am Amore Shanae, owner of Amore Natural Way Natural Hair and Braiding Salon, located West Detroit at 13201 Grand River. We specialize in all braids, twists, and locking services. We offer complimentary wine and refreshments with service, and we can promise you a peaceful, positive, and professional experience. To book with us, give us a call and follow us on Instagram.
Real talk, real talk, real talk.
Hello, I'm Reverend Horace Sheffield.